today, but with a fascinating twist.
Oh, this should be good.
It is. Our guide is John Chavez, and his book, 17, 18, 19, Redshirting Education, is not your typical parenting book.
I've heard of it, yeah.
He comes at this not just as an educator, but get this, as a football coach.
Interesting. So we're talking about someone who's spent over 20 years in the classroom, but also nearly 3 decades coaching football and baseball.
You got it. And he's currently a TV commentator for high school football, so he's got a unique perspective on this.
Definitely seeing these kids both on and off the field.
And here's the kicker. He actually redshirted all 3 of his sons. Hey, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Okay, so we've got a ton of research here, all about reading, specifically 3rd grade reading proficiency.
Sounds fascinating.
It is. And it gets even more interesting when you see how it all connects to future success, especially when it comes to college. Like, did you know that a child's reading level in 3rd grade can actually be a strong indicator of whether they'll go to college?
Wow, 3rd grade seems pretty early to be thinking about college applications.
I know, right? But the connection is there.
So is it like some magical crystal ball predicting the future, or what?
Not exactly. It's more about a major shift that happens around 3rd grade.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, our expert can actually explain it way better than I can.
Think of it as moving from learning to read to reading to learn.
Ooh, I like that.
It's almost like graduating, you know? From sounding out words to actually using reading as a tool to, well, absorb knowledge across all subjects.
Okay, so if a kid hasn't really mastered reading by 3rd grade, they're going to have a tougher time keeping up in all their other subjects later on.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
Imagine trying to learn about, I don't know, photosynthesis or ancient civilizations when you're still struggling to decode every other word.
Yeah, that would be tough.
And it's not just about struggling academically either. It can also take a toll on a child's self-esteem.
Oh, for sure.
And make them, less engaged in school overall.
Right, like that domino effect.
And sadly, in some cases, it can even contribute to higher dropout rates down the line.
It's all connected. And you know what else? The research you sent also mentions how critical thinking, social skills, even a child's belief in themselves are all linked to early reading.
It makes sense when you think about it.
Right. Like, a kid who devours books probably has a richer vocabulary, feels more comfortable expressing themselves, maybe even approaches the world with more curiosity. I can definitely relate to that.
Me too. I was totally that kid, always lost in a book.
So how does all of this link to college? We know those early years are important, but what's the actual connection?
Well, the research is pretty clear on this one. There's a strong correlation between 3rd grade reading levels and high school graduation rates.
And high school graduation being, obviously, a major stepping stone to college.
Exactly. But it's not simply about, being able to read a college textbook. It's about having that solid foundation to learn independently, think critically about complex topics, navigate the demands of higher education.
So it's about equipping them with the skills they'll need to thrive, even after they leave the classroom. Not just about test scores. It's about setting them up for success in life.
You got it. And that's why it's so crucial to pay attention to those early years and make sure every child gets the support they need to become a proficient reader.
Like building a strong foundation for a house.
Perfect analogy. Without it, the whole structure is shaky.
Okay, so we've established that 3rd grade reading is a big deal. But your research also delves into some of the challenges, right?
It does.
It talks about how parental education levels and socioeconomic background can play a role. What did you find most interesting there?
Well, what really stands out is the disparity in access to resources and support, which unfortunately can create a gap in reading proficiency.
Meaning?
Well, children whose parents have higher levels of education often have more access to books at home, engage in more educational activities, experience a more language-rich environment from a very young age.
Right. It's like having a head start before they even set foot in a classroom.
Exactly.
But it's not as simple as just pointing fingers at families or circumstances.
Of course not. It's not about assigning blame.
Gotcha.
It's about recognizing that systemic factors can create unequal opportunities. But the encouraging thing is that there are programs and interventions specifically designed to address these gaps.
So there's hope for leveling the playing field.
Exactly. And speaking of foundations, you also included some research on the impact of 3rd grade math proficiency, particularly mastering those times tables and fractions.
Right. At first I wasn't sure how that tied in, but it's starting to make sense now.
Oh, it definitely connects to the bigger picture. Strong math skills, just like reading, are another crucial building block for future success. Just think about it. Mastering those times tables and fractions lays the groundwork for understanding more complex mathematical concepts later on.
And then there was that one statistic that really surprised me about U.S. students often lagging behind their global peers in basic math skills.
Oh!
That definitely adds a sense of urgency to the conversation.
It does. It's a bit of a wake-up call, really.
Right.
Highlighting the need for effective math instruction in the early years to make sure every child has that solid foundation.
Because those early years are a critical window of opportunity.
They are.
Okay, so we've talked about WHY third grade reading and math are so important, but let's dive a little deeper into that transition from learning to read to reading to learn. What does that actually look like in practice?
Well, there are several key steps involved. First, children need to master those basic literacy skills. Phonemic awareness, phonics, building vocabulary, developing fluency.
So they need to be able to recognize those individual sounds in words, connect letters to those sounds, and read smoothly and accurately. Basically, decoding needs to become second nature.
Exactly. But it doesn't end there. Once they have those basics down, they need to start developing comprehension skills.
Gotcha.
This is where they move beyond simply understanding the words on the page to actually making inferences, drawing conclusions, reading between the lines. It's where things get really exciting.
It's like they're becoming little detectives, figuring out the hidden meanings and messages in the text. That's when reading becomes a truly active process.
Exactly. And as their comprehension skills grow, it's important to expose them to a variety of genres. From fiction and nonfiction to poetry and even informational texts like articles and reports.
Right, like expanding their reading palette.
Yeah.
And it also introduces them to a wider range of vocabulary, especially those content-specific words they'll encounter in subjects like science and social studies.
You got it.
So they're not just learning to read, they're learning to read for a purpose, to gather information, to truly learn about the world around them.
That's the essence of reading to learn. And the more they practice these skills, the more confident and independent they become as learners.
They start to ask questions, analyze what they read, and even connect it to their own experiences and prior knowledge.
Exactly.
And that's where those critical thinking skills really start to blossom.
Absolutely. And as they become more skilled readers, they can apply those skills across all subjects. Reading becomes a powerful tool for learning and exploration.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about the importance of third grade reading and math, the factors that can influence proficiency, and even the steps involved in making that crucial transition from learning to read to reading to learn. But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to highlight one more important aspect of this journey.
Oh, tell me more.
The development of critical thinking skills. This is where things get really interesting.
I'm all ears.
What's fascinating about this stage is that children start to move beyond simply understanding what they read at a surface level.
Right.
They begin to question, to analyze, and to evaluate the information they're taking in. It's like they're developing their own inner BS detector.
You know, you're absolutely right. It's like they're learning to think for themselves, to challenge assumptions, and to form their own opinions based on evidence and reasoning.
Exactly.
Not just taking things at face value anymore.
And these critical thinking skills are essential, not just for academic success, but for navigating a world that's increasingly complex and overflowing with information.
Absolutely.
You'll need these skills to make sense of it all.
100%.
It's about being able to sift through all the noise, to identify credible sources, to recognize bias, and to make informed decisions based on solid reasoning. In today's world, those skills are more important than ever.
Couldn't agree more. And it all starts with those early literacy skills.
Right.
When children develop a love of reading and the ability to comprehend and analyze what they read, they're setting themselves up for a lifetime of learning, growth, and informed decision-making. It's a gift that keeps on giving.
This brings us to a pivotal point in our discussion: the connection between early literacy and a child's future success. We've touched upon the academic advantages, but let's delve a bit deeper into the broader impact on their personal and professional lives.
You know, thinking about how those early reading skills pave the way for critical thinking makes me want to shift gears a bit and explore something else you included in your research: the development of social emotional learning, or SEL. It's a hot topic in education these days, and I'm curious to hear how it all ties into reading and academic success.
Yeah, SEL is everywhere, but I'll admit I'm not totally clear on how it all connects to becoming a better reader.
Well, think of it this way. Research shows a strong link between a child's social emotional well-being and their ability to learn and thrive in school.
Okay.
Children who have strong SEL skills are better able to regulate their emotions, build healthy relationships, empathize with others, and make responsible decisions. Basically, it's about equipping them with those essential life skills that go hand in hand with academic learning.
So it's not just about what's happening in their heads academically, but also about how they're navigating the world around them, their relationships, and their own feelings. It's about the whole package.
You got it. And here's where the connection to literacy gets really interesting. SEL and literacy actually reinforce each other.
Oh.
When children feel safe, supported, and connected in their learning environments, they're more likely to engage in reading and develop those crucial literacy skills we've been talking about.
So it's like a positive feedback loop. Strong SEL skills help fuel literacy development, and strong literacy skills contribute to a child's overall well-being and social emotional growth.
Yeah.
They build on each other.
Precisely. And when we consider those challenges we discussed earlier, socioeconomic disparities, limited access to resources addressing SEL alongside literacy becomes even more crucial.
Because if a child is dealing with social or emotional challenges like feeling anxious or isolated, it's going to make it that much harder to focus on learning to read or tackle those times tables, right? It's like trying to build a house on shaky ground.
Exactly.
So what can we actually do to support SEL in conjunction with literacy development?
Well, it starts with creating those nurturing and inclusive learning environments where children feel safe, respected, and valued. It's about fostering a sense of belonging and connection, where they feel comfortable taking risks, making mistakes, and learning from each other.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about creating a space where they feel empowered to explore and grow, both academically and emotionally.
Absolutely. And it also involves explicitly teaching SEL skills, just like we teach academic skills.
Oh, interesting.
This could involve activities like role-playing different social situations, cooperative learning projects that encourage teamwork and communication, or even just having open discussions about emotions, empathy, and how to handle conflicts constructively. It's about giving them the tools and strategies they need to navigate the social and emotional complexities of life, both inside and outside the classroom.
So it's not just about letting those social emotional skills develop naturally, but actually being intentional about teaching and nurturing them, just like we do with reading and math.
You nailed it. And when we integrate SEL into literacy instruction, we're not just helping children become better readers and learners, we're helping them become more resilient, compassionate, and well-rounded individuals. It's about nurturing the whole child, recognizing that academic success is intertwined with social emotional well-being.
I love that. It's about seeing them as a whole person, not just a collection of academic achievements. And this holistic approach is probably even more crucial for those children who may be facing additional hurdles due to poverty, trauma, or other adverse experiences.
You're absolutely right. Those experiences can significantly impact a child's social emotional development, creating invisible barriers to learning and thriving. By addressing SEL alongside literacy, we're essentially creating a more equitable and inclusive learning environment where all children have a genuine chance to reach their full potential. It's about leveling the playing field, not just academically, but emotionally as well.
That's a powerful point. Now, you know what else caught my attention in your research? The role of play in early literacy development.
Well, interesting.
I have to admit, at first it seemed a bit counterintuitive. Playtime and building those foundational literacy skills, I didn't see the connection.
It's easy to think of play as simply a fun break from learning, but it's so much more than that. What's fascinating is that play provides a natural and engaging context for children to develop language, vocabulary, and storytelling skills. When children engage in pretend play, they're constantly experimenting with language, creating narratives, and negotiating roles and scenarios with each other. It's like they're little authors and actors, creating their own worlds and stories through play.
I love that analogy. You're right. When kids are really immersed in pretend play, they're coming up with characters, dialogue, plot twists. They're basically flexing those creative writing muscles without even realizing it.
Exactly. And these playful interactions help children develop their imaginations, creativity, and problem-solving skills, all of which are essential for literacy and learning.
So it's not just about drilling flashcards or completing worksheets. It's about allowing children to explore, experiment, and express themselves through play. It's about embracing that natural instinct to learn through play.
Absolutely. And when we intentionally incorporate play into literacy activities, we make learning more engaging, enjoyable, and meaningful for children. It's about tapping into their natural curiosity and love of play to foster a lifelong love of reading and learning. We want them to associate reading with joy and discovery, not just with drills and assessments.
That's so important, to make it feel like an adventure, not a chore. And this playful approach is probably even more crucial for those children who may have limited access to books or formal literacy instruction at home.
Exactly. Play can happen anywhere, anytime, with minimal resources. It's a powerful tool for leveling the playing field and ensuring that all children have the opportunity to develop those crucial literacy skills, regardless of their background or circumstances.
It's about making those building blocks of literacy accessible to everyone. So in a nutshell, let's encourage children to play, to imagine, to create, and to explore. It's not just about letting them have fun. It's about nurturing their literacy skills, their social-emotional well-being, and their overall development.
I couldn't agree more. Now, shifting gears a bit, I'm also curious to hear your thoughts on the role of schools in all of this. I mean, we've talked about parents, SEL, the power of play, but what about the actual learning environment? What are some key elements that contribute to a school's success in fostering a love of reading and making sure all their students have the opportunity to thrive?
That's a great question. I think it goes beyond just having a well-stocked library, What do you think?
Well, you're right. It's bigger than just the physical resources. It starts with creating a strong school-wide culture that truly values and celebrates literacy. This means that reading isn't confined to just language arts classes. It's woven into all subjects and every aspect of the school day.
So it's about creating an environment where books, reading materials, and opportunities for literacy engagement are everywhere you look. It's almost like immersing them in a world where reading is just part of the air they breathe.
Exactly. Libraries that are well-stocked and welcoming, classrooms with cozy reading nooks and bookshelves overflowing with stories, even hallways and common areas that showcase student writing or book recommendations. It's about making reading visible and accessible throughout the school.
It's like saying, hey, reading is important here. It's valued here. It's FUN here. And not just through decorations, but through how it's actually integrated into the daily routine.
Precisely. And that includes providing dedicated time for reading, both independently and aloud. This could look like structured silent reading periods, opportunities for students to share their favorite books with classmates, or even inviting guest readers from the community to share their love of stories. It's about making reading a regular and cherished part of the school day.
It's about creating a rhythm, a habit, a time and space where reading is just part of what we do. And not just about reading for the sake of reading, but about fostering that genuine love for it.
Exactly. And it also involves ensuring that every student, regardless of their background or reading level, has access to high-quality literacy instruction. This means providing differentiated instruction, targeted interventions for struggling readers, and enrichment opportunities for those who are already soaring ahead.
So it's about meeting students where they are and providing them with the specific support they need to grow and thrive as readers. It's about personalized learning, not a one-size-fits-all approach.
You got it. It's also important to create opportunities for students to engage in authentic literacy experiences that go beyond just textbooks and worksheets. Think about writing for real audiences, participating in book clubs or author visits, or even creating their own books or digital stories. It's about making literacy relevant, engaging, and connected to the real world.
It's about giving them a purpose, a reason to read and write that goes beyond just getting a good grade. It's about connecting it to their passions, their interests, their lives.
Precisely. And finally, it's about fostering a collaborative culture where teachers, administrators, families, and community members all work together to support students' literacy development. It's about creating a shared responsibility for ensuring that all students have the opportunity to become successful readers and lifelong learners.
It really does take a village, doesn't it? When schools embrace these principles, they're not just creating a learning environment, they're building a community that values and supports literacy at every level.
I couldn't agree more. It's a powerful recipe for nurturing a love of reading and empowering students to reach their full potential. Now, thinking about that shared responsibility, I'd love to hear your thoughts on another crucial aspect of this whole conversation, the importance of early intervention for students who might be struggling with reading.
Right, we've talked about the long-term consequences of falling behind in those early years, but what can we actually do to identify and support these students before those gaps become too wide? It feels like a race against time.
You're right. Early intervention is key when it comes to addressing reading difficulties. The sooner we can identify and support students who are struggling, the greater their chances of catching up and succeeding in school. It's about being proactive, rather than waiting until a child is significantly behind before taking action.
So it's about being vigilant, watching for those early signs, and having systems in place to catch those students who might be slipping through the cracks. What would that look like in practice?
There are several key strategies that can help us identify and support struggling readers in those early years. First and foremost, it involves regular screening and assessments to monitor students' progress and identify any areas of concern. Think of it like those regular checkups we get at the doctor's office, They help catch potential problems early on.
So it's about having those systems in place to track students' literacy development and flag any potential red flags, like consistently scoring below benchmarks or struggling to keep up with peers.
Exactly. And once we've identified students who may need additional support, it's crucial to provide targeted interventions that address their specific needs.
Makes sense.
This might involve small group instruction, one-on-one tutoring, or specialized programs specifically designed for struggling readers. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution. It's about tailoring the support to meet the individual needs of each child.
It's like having a toolbox full of different strategies and resources and knowing which ones to use for each child's unique learning profile.
That's a great analogy. And it's also important to remember that this isn't just about what happens in the classroom. We need to involve families in the process, keeping them informed of their child's progress and working collaboratively to develop strategies that can be reinforced at home. It's about creating a true partnership between school and home to support the child's literacy development.
So it's about creating a consistent and supportive network around that child, where everyone is working together towards the same goal. And, of course, it's crucial to create that supportive and encouraging learning environment within the school as well.
Exactly. We want students to feel safe to take risks, make mistakes, and ask for help when they need it. It's about fostering a growth mindset where students understand that learning is a journey and that challenges are opportunities for growth. We want them to see setbacks not as failures, but as stepping stones on their path to becoming confident readers.
It's about creating a culture of learning, where mistakes are seen as part of the process, not something to be ashamed of. When we implement these strategies, we create a powerful safety net for struggling readers, ensuring that they have the support they need to succeed. Now, as we go even deeper into the world of early literacy, I want to shift our focus to a topic that often sparks a lot of debate, but is incredibly important: the role of phonics instruction in developing reading skills. There's been a lot of discussion about the best approach to teaching reading, and I'm curious to hear your perspective on this complex issue.
You're right. It's a topic that's generated a lot of discussion and, different perspectives among educators and researchers. But even with various approaches and philosophies out there, there's a growing consensus that explicit and systematic phonics instruction plays a crucial role in helping children learn to read.
So, for those who might not be familiar, can you break down what phonics instruction actually is and why it's considered so essential?
Absolutely. Phonics instruction really zeroes in on the relationship between letters and sounds. It's about teaching children how to decode words by breaking them down into their individual sounds and then blending those sounds together to read the whole word. It's like giving them the code to unlock the written word.
So it's not just about memorizing sight words or guessing at the meaning of words based on context clues. It's about giving children a solid foundation in the actual building blocks of reading, understanding how those letters and sounds work together to create meaning.
Exactly. And research consistently shows that explicit and systematic phonics instruction, especially in those early years, is highly effective in helping children develop reading fluency and comprehension skills.
So it's like giving them the keys to unlock the entire world of reading.
Precisely. But it's important to remember that while phonics instruction is essential, it's not the whole story. Effective reading instruction also involves developing vocabulary, comprehension skills, and nurturing that love of reading that we've been talking about.
So it's about taking a balanced approach, incorporating phonics instruction alongside those other important elements of literacy development. It's like a well-rounded meal. You need all the different food groups for a healthy diet.
I love that analogy. It's about nourishing those young minds with all the ingredients they need to become strong and confident readers. And it's also crucial to remember that not all children learn at the same pace or in the same way. That's where differentiated instruction comes in, recognizing that different children may require different types of support to succeed.
So it's about meeting each child where they are and providing them with the individualized instruction they need to thrive. It's about recognizing that learning to read is a journey, and each child might take a slightly different path.
Exactly. When we embrace a balanced and differentiated approach to reading instruction, we empower all children to become successful readers and lifelong learners. And speaking of empowering children, you know what else I found fascinating in your research? The role technology can play in supporting and enhancing reading development. It's something we can't ignore in today's digital world.
I was just thinking about that. I mean, kids today are growing up surrounded by technology, and it's only going to become more integrated into their lives. It seems like a missed opportunity if we don't figure out how to leverage these tools to foster a love of reading and build those essential literacy skills.
Exactly. And it's not about replacing traditional books or teaching methods. It's about using technology as a complementary tool to enhance and enrich the learning experience.
So it's about finding that balance between the traditional and the digital, recognizing that each has its own strengths and can work together to create a more engaging and effective learning environment.
Precisely. For example, think about digital books and interactive reading apps. They can provide a multi-sensory experience, engaging children with animations, sound effects, and even games that reinforce reading skills. It's about making reading more dynamic and interactive, especially for those children who might have shorter attention spans or who learn best through visual or auditory stimulation.
It's about meeting them where they are. And let's face it, where they are is increasingly in that digital space.
Yeah.
It's about speaking their language, so to speak.
Exactly. And technology can also offer more personalized learning experiences, tailoring instruction to each child's individual needs and reading level. Adaptive reading programs can adjust the difficulty of texts and activities based on a child's progress, ensuring that they're always appropriately challenged but not overwhelmed.
It's like having a personal tutor who can adapt to their individual learning style and pace.
That's a great way to put it. And let's not forget about access. Technology can provide access to a wider range of reading materials than ever before, including books, articles, and websites from around the world. This can be a game changer for children who live in rural areas or who have limited access to libraries or bookstores. It's about breaking down those barriers to literacy and making those reading resources available to all children, regardless of their location or socioeconomic background.
It's about leveling the playing field when it comes to access to information and knowledge.
Absolutely. And technology can also be a powerful tool for fostering a sense of community and shared learning.
Oh, how so?
By facilitating collaboration and communication. Think about online book clubs, virtual author visits, or even just video conferencing with classmates to discuss a book they're reading together. It's about expanding the boundaries of the classroom and connecting children with the wider world of literacy and learning.
It's about creating those connections and sparking those conversations that can really ignite a passion for reading.
Exactly. And finally, let's not underestimate the power of technology to empower children to become creators of their own digital stories, videos, and presentations. It's about giving them a voice, a platform to share their ideas and perspectives with the world. It's about transforming children from passive consumers of information to active creators and contributors to the world of literacy and knowledge.
It's about giving them the tools to express themselves, to tell their stories, to share their unique voices with the world. It's pretty powerful stuff.
It is. And it all comes back to that core message: when used thoughtfully and strategically, technology can be a powerful ally in fostering a love of reading, building those essential literacy skills, and empowering children to become lifelong learners and engaged citizens in this rapidly evolving digital world.
So as we wrap up this second part of our deep dive, I think it's important to circle back to a theme that's been woven throughout our entire conversation: the undeniable connection between literacy and a child's future success. We've talked about the academic advantages, the impact on career prospects, and even the broader societal benefits of fostering a truly literate population.
And we've explored the critical role that parents, educators, communities, and even technology can play in nurturing that love of reading and making sure all children have the opportunity to develop these essential skills. It really is a collective effort.
But before we move on to our final segment, I want to leave you with a thought-provoking question to ponder. If we know that literacy is the very foundation for lifelong learning, critical thinking, and active citizenship, what more can we do to create a world where every single child has the opportunity to thrive and reach their full potential? We'll delve deeper into this question in our next segment, but for now, I encourage you to sit with this challenge and consider how you might contribute to building a more equitable and literate world for all.
Welcome back. As we wrap up this deep dive into early literacy, I want to really hone in on something that's been at the heart of everything we've talked about.
Yeah.
Bridging the literacy gap. Creating a more equitable future for all children.
It's something I was thinking about too, actually. As you're talking about technology leveling the playing field, it made me think about All those kids who don't have that access, who are facing an uphill battle from the start. We've covered so much ground, from those third-grade milestones to the role of parents and schools, but we can't ignore the reality that not all children have equal opportunities when it comes to literacy.
You're absolutely right. And unfortunately, the research you sent over really confirms that, There are still significant disparities in literacy rates based on things like socioeconomic status, race, ethnicity, even where a child lives. It's a stark reminder that access to quality education and literacy resources is not a given for every child.
It's like some kids are starting a marathon a mile behind the starting line. And those disparities have consequences that ripple out, right? Far beyond just their early years.
Exactly. Children who struggle with reading are more likely to face, a whole host of challenges. Academic difficulties, social and emotional struggles, even limited career opportunities later in life. It's a cycle that can be really hard to break.
So how do we break this cycle? We've talked about solutions on a smaller scale, supporting parents, fostering SEL, creating those literacy-rich schools. But how do we tackle this bigger issue of systemic inequality? Where do we even begin?
It's a complex challenge for sure, and there's no easy answer. It requires a multi-pronged approach, one that addresses both the systemic factors that create those disparities and the individual needs of those children who are already falling behind. We need to be able to see both the forest and the trees, so to speak.
Okay, I like that. So a multi-pronged approach, attacking the problem from all sides. What would that look like, in actual concrete terms? What are some tangible steps we can take?
Well, for me, it starts with investing in high-quality early childhood education programs. Programs that provide all children with a strong foundation in literacy, regardless of their background. That means well-trained teachers, engaging curricula, and plenty of resources to support language and literacy development from a very young age. It's about giving every child a fair chance to succeed right from the start.
Right, so it's not just about providing access to preschool or kindergarten, but it's about making sure those programs are actually setting kids up for success in reading. Quality, not just quantity.
You got it. But we also can't forget about the kids who might need a little extra help along the way. That's where those targeted interventions come in, providing small group instruction, one-on-one tutoring, or even specialized programs that are designed to address specific reading difficulties. It's about catching those kids who are struggling early on and giving them the support they need to catch up and thrive.
It's like building those scaffolding supports around them, helping them reach that same level as their peers. And, as you were talking about those systemic factors, it made me think, are we just talking about educational solutions here? Or are we also talking about addressing those bigger societal issues like poverty and inequality?
You're hitting on a crucial point for sure. Addressing literacy disparities isn't just about fixing schools. It's about tackling those broader social and economic factors that create those unequal playing fields. Those things that put some kids at a disadvantage right from the start. Think about initiatives to reduce poverty, improve access to healthcare and nutrition, and provide support for families who are struggling to make ends meet. When we address those underlying factors, we create a more fertile ground for literacy to take root and flourish.
It's about creating an environment where children can thrive, not just survive. And it's not just about individual families or classrooms. It's about creating a society that values and supports literacy for everyone. So are there things we can do on a policy level to advocate for those changes?
Absolutely. We need to be advocating for policies that put literacy front and center, increased funding for early childhood education, expanded access to libraries and community literacy programs, even teacher training programs that equip educators with the most up-to-date and effective methods for teaching reading. It's about using our voices and our collective power to make a difference, to create change that benefits all children.
So it's about being engaged citizens, participating in those conversations and pushing for policies that reflect our values. And as we've been talking about all these big picture solutions, it made me think, are there things we can do on a smaller scale to make a difference? Like in our own lives, in our communities?
Oh, for sure. Fostering a culture of literacy starts at home, in our families and communities. It's about encouraging parents to read to their children, even from a very young age, providing access to books and creating those fun opportunities for kids to experience the joy of reading. It's about making reading a valued and integral part of our daily lives.
It's about sending the message that reading matters, that stories matter, that knowledge matters. And it's not just something we do in school, it's a part of who we are.
I love that. When we embrace these strategies, both big and small, and work together to address the complex issue of literacy inequality, we can create a world where every child has the chance to thrive, to reach their full potential. It's a vision worth fighting for.
It really is.
Yep.
And it reminds us that we all have a role to play in making that happen. Whether we're parents, educators, policymakers, or just concerned citizens, we can all do our part. So, that wraps up our deep dive into the world of early literacy.
It's been such a fascinating conversation.
I hope you found it informative and maybe even a little inspiring. It's a reminder that literacy is about so much more than just decoding words on a page. It's about unlocking human potential, empowering minds, and creating a brighter future for everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those pages turning.
Hey everyone, let's deep dive into something I know is on a lot of your minds. Redshirting. Specifically, how it might affect a child's academics. By third grade, especially in reading and math.
Big decision for a lot of parents.
Huge, yeah. You guys have sent in tons of research and articles, so
Yeah.
let's break it all down to make sure we're all on the same page, though.
Sure.
Redshirting is basically like giving your kid an extra year before kindergarten.
Right.
So they're a little older, maybe more mature, and hopefully that gives them a boost in school.
Makes sense.
But get this. The research actually shows that early math skills can be a better predictor of how well a kid will do in school later on than early reading skills. Kind of surprising, right?
It is interesting. We always hear so much about like early literacy and reading.
Right. So why does math sometimes feel like, this huge mountain to climb?
Well, think of it this way. Math is kind of like building a brick wall. Each concept builds on the last one. And if you miss a brick early on,
the whole thing gets wobbly.
Exactly. And then there's the abstract thinking math needs.
Like
Negative numbers.
Yeah.
That's a tough one for kids to get because it's not something they see in the real world the same way they see, the color blue.
Yeah.
It's abstract.
Makes sense. Reading, on the other hand, it's all about language. And kids hear language all the time.
From day one, practically.
Bedtime stories, just chatting with family, so it feels way more familiar.
Right.
So we've got these two big subjects, reading and math, both super important.
Absolutely.
But the research you sent points to third grade being like this huge EE turning point.
Yeah.
What's so special about third grade?
Well, third grade is when kids go from learning to read to reading to learn.
Whoa, that's a good way to put it.
It's like before third grade, reading is like learning how to use a hammer.
Okay.
You're focused on the mechanics.
Gotcha.
But then in third grade, reading becomes the hammer you use to build like a whole house of knowledge.
I love that.
And it's the same with math. It's not just adding and subtracting anymore. It gets more complex. They got to use their math skills for word problems.
Which needs good reading, too.
Exactly. It's all connected.
So they need both writing and math to really unlock learning in third grade.
Yeah.
Like they need both oars in the water to row the boat.
Yeah.
What if a kid is struggling, though? The research mentioned different interventions, even some specific software like Lexia for reading and Dreambox for math. Have you used those?
I have. They're really cool because they adapt to each kid's level.
Oh, how so?
So like with Lexia, a child works through this personalized learning path that helps them with the exact reading skills they need to get better at.
So it's like a personal tutor, basically, that focuses on where they need help.
Exactly. And that's why early intervention is so important. The sooner we can figure out what a kid needs help with, the sooner we can get them caught up.
And that can help them feel more confident.
Absolutely. And that confidence doesn't stop with just schoolwork either. It can really affect their social and emotional lives too.
Okay, let's dive into that in part 2. We'll talk about how these academic struggles can impact how a child feels about themselves.
Sounds good.
See you there.
So we were talking about how a child's success in school, with reading and math, can really affect their emotional well-being.
Yeah, it's a big deal. Imagine being that kid who always feels lost in class or behind. Tough, right?
It can be really disheartening. Kids start to, doubt themselves, maybe feel anxious about school. Some even withdraw from social stuff altogether.
Yeah, that makes sense. The research you sent talked about that, like really vividly. Kids avoiding reading aloud or group work because they're scared of being judged or feeling embarrassed.
It's like a defense mechanism, They're trying to protect themselves from those bad feelings.
But then they might miss out on actually learning and connecting with other kids.
Exactly. And it can snowball, Struggling academically, feeling bad about themselves, and then starting to isolate. Not a good combo.
No, not at all. And the longer it goes on, those negative thoughts can stick. like, I'm just bad at math, or I'm a slow reader.
Right, and that just chips away at their self-esteem, which is where this redshirting idea comes in, right?
Yeah, some parents see that extra year as a way to give their kid a little breathing room, time to build that confidence, and maybe avoid some of those negative experiences.
Like giving them a chance to, build a solid foundation before they have to build the whole skyscraper.
So let's say a parent IS thinking about redshirting.
Mm-hmm.
What are some benefits they might actually see by, say, third grade?
Well, that extra year can make a huge difference with foundational skills, both reading and math. They start first grade already knowing their letters and sounds, numbers, those basics.
They're not starting from scratch.
Exactly. And that can make going to school so much smoother. I mean, think about it. They're older. They've had more time to develop those, fine motor skills for writing. They're better at paying attention, following directions. It adds up.
So they're just more ready for what school throws at them.
Yeah. And remember, we talked about those early math skills being so important?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if a kid's had that extra year to, play with numbers, figure out spatial stuff, just develop that number sense.
They're going to feel more confident with those tougher math concepts later on.
Right. It's like they've built that mathematical intuition. And that confidence, that's huge.
It is, like having that little voice inside saying, you got this.
Totally. And when kids feel confident about what they can do, they're more likely to participate in class, try harder things, maybe even enjoy learning.
Okay, so redshirting could lead to stronger skills, more confidence, a smoother start to school. What about social and emotional benefits?
Well, a redshirted kid, being a bit older, might feel more comfortable with their classmates. They might be more likely to, be a leader, handle social situations better, and even deal with conflict more maturely.
The research had some examples, like redshirted kids feeling more comfortable doing group projects or starting friendships.
It's like they have more social skills. They're not so worried about fitting in or keeping up.
And that social confidence can make them feel better overall.
For sure. It's all connected, academic confidence, social confidence, feeling good about themselves.
Redshirting sounds like it could really set off a positive chain reaction.
That's the hope. But of course, like anything, it's not a magic solution. There are some potential downsides to think about.
Always a catch, huh?
Right. So it's super important to look at this from all angles.
Let's do that in part 3. We'll make sure everyone listening has all the info they need to decide what's best for their kids. See you there. Okay, so we're back and we've talked about all the potential good stuff about redshirting, but like you were saying, there's always another side.
Right. It's not always the best choice for every kid.
What are some of the things that parents should think about, maybe on the downside of redshirting?
One thing is, even though a redshirted kid is older, they might actually end up feeling bored in class.
Bored? But they're older. Shouldn't they be, more advanced?
Not necessarily. It really depends on the kid. And if the schoolwork isn't challenging enough.
Oh, I see.
If it's too easy, they might check out.
Like, why bother trying, right?
Yeah. And instead of getting excited about learning, they lose interest.
So finding that right level of challenge is important no matter what age they are.
Absolutely. And we can't forget about the social side of things either.
Oh, right. We were talking about that before, about how redshirting could help some kids socially.
Yeah, but being older can also create a weird dynamic. Like, if they end up being a lot older than their classmates all the way through school.
They might feel like they don't really fit in.
Exactly. And kids, they really want to be part of the group,
Belonging is so important.
Huge, yeah. And that social disconnect, it can be tough. Especially as they get older, it can make them feel isolated, even hurt their self-esteem.
Wow, this is a lot to consider. It seems like redshirting isn't a simple yes or no decision.
It's definitely not one size fits all. Every kid is different. Every family is different.
What are some things that parents should think about when they're trying to make this decision?
Well, I always say the most important thing is to really know your child. Are they naturally curious? Do they get excited about learning new things? Do they need a little more time to get comfortable in new situations? Those are all clues.
Those are great questions.
And of course, if there are any developmental things going on that might affect their learning, that's super important to consider too.
So it's not just about age. It's about all these different pieces of the puzzle.
Right. It's about the whole picture. And the good news is parents don't have to figure this out all alone.
There are people who can help.
Absolutely. Talk to teachers, child development experts, or even other parents who've gone through this already.
Getting different perspectives can really help.
Definitely. It's about gathering information, weighing the pros and cons, and then, trusting your gut feeling.
That's so important, trusting that parental instinct. Well, as we wrap up this deep dive on redshirting, here's a final thought for everyone listening. We've talked about how important it is to help kids love learning A&D, have a strong foundation in reading and math. How do we create those amazing learning environments that do both? Ones that let kids be curious and set them up for success?
Such a good question. I think it starts with remembering that every single kid is unique. What works for one might not work for another. Some kids do great with structure, others need more flexibility, some are hands-on learners, others love to read.
There's so many different learning styles.
It's about finding those personalized learning experiences, the ones that really tap into each child's strengths, and of course making learning fun.
So important, making it enjoyable. Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive into redshirting. We hope this has given you some things to think about and that you feel more confident about making this decision for your family. Until next time, keep those deep dives going.